What's up, everybody? This is Brenton from Forza Tuning and Performance, and this is part 3 of, I guess, how Forza came to be, or my story, or whatever you want to call it, or how I got here, or some things that I had to go through or whatnot, and some questions that we specifically got asked off the first 2 videos. So here we go. Hope you enjoy it. I did whatever I had to do to get it off the ground, literally. Legally, obviously, I'm not doing anything illegal, but an incredible amount of work. And I can remember distinctly, like, at the time thinking like, oh my God, this is like nuts. This is so hard. I wasn't foolish enough to believe that it was going to be easy. I was fully aware it was going to be hard. Did I understand or conceptualize how hard it was actually going to be? Absolutely not. I kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and there was a lot of times where I would sit up at night by myself, couldn't sleep, and I'd literally like stare out the window, and I would wonder if I was crazy, what I was doing was stupid, if all the people that said what I was doing were stupid were right the whole time, and if I was like delusional. But for whatever reason, I kept pushing forward, and things picked up. It got busier, and I got some good people, and it started picking up. So let's fast forward to this is January 2014. So after a couple years, sales kept going up dramatically. I started coming up with more efficient ways to do performance cars that are different than most of the performance shops that fail. I try to analyze, like, what are they doing? Why do some fail? Why do some make it? Constantly trying to evolve. In other words, and that's another important thing that you have to keep in mind. I see a lot of places that they get somewhere that's some level of success and they stop. Like, that's it. Okay, it's just like, if it works, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I don't think that you can achieve an extremely high level of successfulness in that kind of mindset, because everything's always evolving, everything's always changing. Number one, you have to accept that, and you have to evolve with everything. You can never get complacent. I would constantly, incessantly try to come up with any possible thing I could do. I was working on social media, cars, designing packages, literally anything. And so, some stuff pans out, some stuff doesn't. I was always very open to trying anything I possibly could. So during this whole time, granted, the shop is making money, okay? I'm living in a little farmhouse, and I am living out of the business. So what that means is I am not paying myself anything. I'm taking enough money to buy myself food and the bare necessities, and I'm driving this total piece of shit car. Every single penny that the company is making, aside from what it takes to feed myself, I'm dumping back into the business. I'm working incessantly for food to eat. People would see stuff and they'd ask me, and they would be under the assumption that I'm making a lot of money because there's Lamborghinis and Ferraris in the shop. I guess that's flattering, but the reality is the least money I've ever made in my life. I probably made more as a teenager than I'm making at this point in time. But you have a choice. I can take the money out of the business and I can buy myself something fancy, or I can put it back into business, push it for further growth. So you don't have to be a business major to understand which one of those is the better choice, obviously. I go a couple years, and the area that I'm at is not conducive to the type of work that we do. It's just geographically, it's not the right type of thing. So I just sit back and think, and part of what I mentioned about evolving is you have to constantly look at the big picture, and you have to constantly think, what can I do, if anything, to make this better? And you're going to be faced with a lot of very uncomfortable situations, okay? And I mentioned this earlier in the first video, and I said I would touch base with it later, so I'm going to touch base on it now. What I'm about to say doesn't just apply to people that want to start a business. This applies literally with everything. The only way you evolve, okay, in my mind, at least, I'm not a psychologist or anything, I'm a mechanic, so take this with a grain of salt, but from my experience, the only time a person is truly evolving is when they are in an uncomfortable situation. And the majority of people will gravitate to the most comfortable situation. And you can apply this to school as a kid, like trying to sign up for the easiest classes, but you have to do the least amount of work, which sounds great. And trust me, I hated school. I got through it. It was miserable. I was not a school type person. But that same mentality, you're not really learning as much as you could at school. And that's what I did at school. So not as you get older and you go through life, people do this with jobs. So they'll get a job somewhere, and a lot of people will try to get the easiest job or the least amount of work, or they'll try to do something, get really good at it where they don't have to think too much, and they just repeat it for year after year, and they don't really progress. You know, they get to a certain point and they stop. To surpass that level, you have to leave that comfort zone and put yourself in an uncomfortable position. This is all subconscious with almost all people. I don't think this is a conscious decision. So when I said, my parents always said, get some type of award for having to learn the hard way, okay? I wasn't consciously doing that, but what I would do, and without even realizing it, is I was constantly putting myself in uncomfortable situations. And I learned a lot of hard lessons. So I'm not saying that that's always the best thing to do. But when it comes to like business and stuff and growing, so after a few years, I could have stayed where I was at. And I had money in the bank. The business had no debt. But I knew that I was at a point where I was going to keep working extremely hard, but the rate of growth was going to slow down significantly, okay, because of the geographic location I was in. It's basically like I'm selling the best bikinis in the world, but I'm in Alaska. Juan down at the beach on the boardwalk is selling the cheapest piece of shit bikini that you can get, but he's on the boardwalk at the beach. Juan's gonna kick my ass. That's just the way it is. I'm not at the right place. I don't have the right area. I decided to move the business. Obviously, that is a very scary move. I was roughly, the business is 2.5 years old. It's far from stable. Most businesses don't get stable for 5 to 10 years. I knew if I had stayed there would have been a time where it's mentally, it's like, you know, I've been here. It would have been harder to move because it just gets in your mindset. It's harder to pack up and leave. Because that comfort level gets higher. I studied, then I engulfed myself with studying demographics. Okay, so I would buy DMV records. Not sure how legal it was, but basically I could pick specific areas of the country or zip codes, and I could get a list of who owned what cars registered in that county. And I would buy these, and I would sit up at night and I would study these and find out, okay, this zip code in this area, there's this many Lamborghinis registered, there's this many Ferraris, there's this many Corvettes, and I would plot out these maps, okay, of how many cars were in each area. And then I would study things like median income, population growth, countless other stuff, you know, and you know, people would stop by the house and I've got all this shit all over the place, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing, you know? And I would explain it, and then they're like, you're crazy, whatever. But I was trying to make the best, and it was gonna be a big risk, but I was gonna try to minimize the risk and make the smartest decision that I could make. So I picked Florida. I personally always wanted to live at the beach since I was a teenager, or since I was a kid. My parents used to take us to Myrtle Beach all the time. I hate winter, I hate cold weather, I love the beach. So I picked Florida, and I really wasn't sure where, so I would do a series of car shows called Festivals of Speed. For you guys in Florida, I'm sure you're familiar with that. But I would come down here periodically through all different areas of the state. So I could stay for a few days or a week, do a car show, and kind of analyze the specific areas and see quality of life-wise, where did I want to live? And then I would study the demographics of each individual place. I had been to the Tampa Bay area several times. It was the most, felt like home as far as like hospitality and stuff like that. It met all the requirements that I had been studying. Okay, so then I embarked on trying to find a place in this area, which is not easy. So I spent multiple times flying down here, trying to run my business at the same time, looking at new places. At the same time, I was going through a shitty divorce situation, you know, so my life was very not the best. It was very hard to focus and stay focused on what I needed to focus on. I ended up finding a place, and it's the building that we're currently in. There's a whole story on that, but we don't need to get into all that. But you know, it came time I found a place, and I speculated that it was going to take probably $250,000 to $300,000 to move and to support the business long enough before it became self-sustaining. Now, I came up with these figures off what I knew, and I'm not a business analyst or anything like that. I had half that money, and I had people that were wanting to invest. You know, you read the fine details, and it's not really the best deal. So I really didn't have this solid financial plan how I was going to make it. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because I think planning is good and planning is important, but I think a lot of people stifle their success by over planning. And this is just my opinion, okay? So I'm not some crazy successful person, but this is just my, maybe it'll apply to something you're thinking about. I don't spend an excessive amount of time planning. In other words, I will study demographics so I have some hardcore facts, because facts are facts. You can't dispute those. But as far as like planning, realistically, none of us know what's going to happen 3 hours from now. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. People think that they do based off what's happened yesterday and the day before and the week before that, and what they think in their mind is going to happen. But things can change at the blink of an eye, and they do all the time. So if it gets to the point where you're planning and it's stifling your progress, in other words, I couldn't have ever planned for what actually it was like coming down here. What that means is basically I found a building and I signed a lease. I had to work out terms to pay the down payment over time on the building. I had no idea how I was going to financially make it. I uprooted my business. I moved it 1,000 miles away. I got down here. I briefly talked about the hurricane and insurance and all that other fiasco. And honestly, I had no clue whether I was going to make it or fail. Like, not anything at all. Totally 50-50. That's the reality of doing something like this. This is not to deter anybody. This is just telling 100% the truth, and this is what it's been like for me. So as far as I have people asking me, how do you raise capital for a business? I don't really know. I didn't ever do that. I wasn't smart enough to figure out a proper way to do that. So I'm probably not the best to answer that question. So I can just tell you basically how I got here. As far as goals, I always have a lot of goals, far past anything that you see us doing currently. I think that's very important. If you're younger and you have, as far as like educational goals, on the flip side of planning, I think it's good to have goals so you have some direction of a place to move, but you have to be open-minded to be able to switch that up, because I've talked about a few different scenarios where some people have come into my life and they've drastically changed the direction of my life in a very short amount of time. They've either done something to, for whatever reason, make me believe in myself more or show me that stuff is positive, and I think that happens with everybody and not just me. I think it happens with a lot of people, and a lot of people don't really realize it at the time, and an opportunity could slip past them, or they don't see it for what it is, or they don't take advantage of it. So I think being aware of your situations and paying very close attention to the people that are around you are super important. You're gonna have some really good people come into your life, and you're gonna have a lot of bad people come into your life. The bad people, unfortunately, are usually very good at portraying themselves as good people, okay? So it can be very, very hard, especially when you're younger. You're naturally naive until you get screwed a few times. It's very hard to distinguish. And then as you get older, you tend to get very more cynical because you've been screwed over, but you can't be so closed-minded to not believe that there's still good people out there, and so that's something that takes a constant, you constantly have to work at it. I'm probably more guilty of probably believing in people too much. That's probably a weak point. My mom and dad would agree, and probably the people that work with me on a day-to-day basis that you can tell care about what I'm doing and making sure that I don't make a mistake, they could probably agree with that, even if they don't say it out loud. That's important. And another thing that I always talk about is trying your best to be as logical as you can when you're making decisions, okay? My personal belief is it's like a seesaw, okay? One side of the seesaw is logic, the other side of the seesaw is emotion. It's very hard to do both. When somebody has a lot of emotion on something, or is highly emotional about a situation or something like that, or a person, usually they tend to make really stupid decisions. I've done this many times, okay? And then a lot of times when you have very little emotional attachment to something, it's very easy to make a super logical decision. And you can relate this to relationships. Everybody's been with somebody that, didn't work out, and, it's a girl or a guy, and, they're not good, for you, but there'll be a certain point in time where in your mind, like, that's what you want. And then later on, when the emotion is gone, you're like, holy shit, I'm a complete idiot. What the hell was I thinking? I think that's very important to think about when you're making decisions about your life and in business in general. And then try to form a team around you that can help you with that process. In other words, get some people that you trust in your circle, because they're going to have a different outlook. They're going to have a different, either non-emotional or emotional connection with whatever you're trying to deal with. And a lot of times those people, if you will listen to them and be open-minded, they can save you from a lot of bad decisions. And this is even like personal relationships. It's just like you're with a girl and she's crazy and your buddy's like, oh, she's crazy, and you're like, you stretch this toxic relationship out until finally you realize it, where if you could have been open-minded and just removed yourself from the emotion, you probably could have saved yourself a lot of trouble, jail time, lawsuits, whatever. But business-wise, this happens too. Employees, you can get in the same situation. So if you realize that and are aware of, logic and emotion, basically sitting at opposite ends of the bar together, they don't get along, they're not going to talk to each other, they're mortal enemies. If you're in an emotional state, chances are you're more likely to make an illogical decision, okay? And that could steer you off course for being successful. So other than that, I don't really know. The only really questions that I get other than that are, how do I pick employees? That's probably, honestly, for anybody that has started a business or currently has a business or did have a business, that is probably the hardest thing to do. I can't really say that I have a good answer for that because I have an incredible group of people around me. I feel very fortunate, and it's not like I did anything genius to do this. I'm not really sure why. I try to be morally a good person, and I feel like that attracts other good people. But I can't really say that that's exactly why I've been blessed with the team of people that I have around me. That's the hardest part. How do you pick employees? How do you find people? As far as what we do here, number one, they have to share the same passion for what you have or what you're doing. I think is a big thing. Number two, what is their moral or ethical code? Okay, and a lot of people are going to not be truthful about this. You have to look through people a little bit to try to find this. So if you're wanting to run a very moral, ethically high business, which I think you should, the people that are just out there to screw people for money, I think is a very unfortunate thing. But it is the way it is. There's always going to be people like that in every industry. So I think if you pick a group of people that share your same moral or ethical code, that's probably going to be one of the most helpful things that you can do. Another thing is trying to pick people that are able to look at the big picture, or at least if they can on their own, if you lay out the bigger picture, they can see it in that manner and it's appealing to them. Like if they want to do something big, and because everybody wants to grow, everybody wants to make more money, and so my most important job is not building a car or figuring out exactly what we need to put on the next car. My biggest job or responsibility is to provide for every single person that is a part of this, because they're relying on the success of this to take care of their families and to not only just feed their families, but for their own growth. And this is something that I constantly think about all the time. It's stressful. It's a lot of stuff to think about, because I genuinely want everybody here to excel at what they're doing, okay? And if I make a bad decision, okay, that negatively affects every single person that's involved with this. So I think you have to be extremely unselfish, okay? You have to make decisions that are on the best for the entire company or the entire group. And it's, still to this day, so people ask, what do I drive? Do I have a Lamborghini or something? Hell no, I don't have a damn Lamborghini. I drive a truck. I am super happy to drive. I drive a Denali dually, and I feel like that's like super nice, because I was driving a $1,500 total piece of shit for years. So no, I don't have a Lamborghini. I don't have a lot of money. I don't have, I basically still put all the money back into the business years later. So, people see the pictures of the shop and they see the cars, and, their automatically assumption is, wow, he must be killing, he must make a lot of money. No, I don't. I could probably go and get a job tomorrow and make more money than I'm making now. I'm not doing this for money specifically. I'm doing this to try to build something that doesn't exist. I'm trying to build something, does stuff better than everybody else, that is moral and ethically right, to provide stuff. So if it's car service, because that's what I know, packages or stuff, you know, people that are passionate about their cars, that it's important to them, to provide them with something that they're getting the most for their money. And, you know, we have to make money to support everybody, but morally, is it an acceptable amount of profit, or are you taking advantage of people? So these are all things that come into play. This is the real world, what running a business is like. I think having a realistic idea of what running a business is like and what the responsibilities of it are like, especially if you have a very high moral ethic code, you're going to face a lot of tough decisions. I wouldn't change anything I'm doing for the world. I work all the time. I mean, I typically work between till 10 or 12 o'clock at night. And I don't mind working, okay? I've worked very hard my entire life. But honestly, the thing that makes me happy, like happiest, are when people come into work and like they like being here. It's some reassurance that like something I'm doing is right. You know, I definitely don't make all the right decisions, but if people come in, I see most people, they hate going to their job, or they'll go to some place they hate because they make a certain amount of money, form a lifestyle that is dependent on that amount of money, and they're stuck. Like they can't go anywhere. They have to make that to support it. And it's essentially like sort of being in jail without being in jail. You know, you're totally limited by that. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that's very good quality of life. So when the guys come into work and they genuinely want to be here, and they come in without me asking them to be here, and the people that are here are, I mean, sometimes they'll come up and they'll thank me for having the opportunity to work here. That's extremely humbling, in all honesty. Probably more humbling than I can possibly describe in words. But it does give me reassurance. It's like, okay, I'm working, I'm going through a lot of stress, but something I'm doing is right, you know. That's what I get out of it. A lot of people ask me, like, you know, why do I do all this? Or they'll see me in a stressful situation and, you know, why do you do this? Or, you know, it's stuff like that. To be honest, I have no idea whether, I'm sure that there will be things that I look back on for, you know, working the hours that I do and time that I didn't spend with my kids and stuff, and I will definitely have regrets. I'm 100% aware of that. And that's always stuff that's on my mind. And if you're gonna go out and you're gonna start something and you're gonna have a business, you know, that's stuff that you need to be aware of. You know, so there's a lot of things to consider. That's about it. That's only the questions that I think I can get. I'm sure they're gonna break this up, you know, because it's a lot of incessant rambling at this point. So they'll edit it and make it less rambly. But if there's anything that any of you all want to know specifically, I don't really hide anything. I'm not a bullshitter, so I'll answer any question, personal, business, it doesn't matter to me. So if there's anything that you see in a video, or that, you know, you want to know more specifically, or if it can help you in any way, shape, or form, I have no problem talking about it. The easiest thing to do is just put it in the comments. The video guys will see that and they'll write it down and they'll put it in the video. But that is about it. I guess this is part 2, 3, 4, whatever they break this thing up into. Thank you, all of y'all that support us and support the channel, subscribe, hit the notification bell. We really appreciate that. The media department, they work their ass off making sure stuff gets posted and editing these videos and putting them together. You know, so that really means a lot to me, and it really means a lot to them. That's about it. You know, until the next time, I'll see you guys later.